Hello and welcome to the How to Choose Happiness and Freedom Show. I'm your host, Lauren Foster, happiness teacher and founder of Be Happy First. As a certified life mastery consultant, masters of wisdom and meditation teacher, and primal health coach, I'm on a mission to help 1 million women learn to be happy and free on purpose, healthy, wealthy, and joyfully living life on your own terms. Happiness is a choice, and you can always choose to be happy first. Thanks so much for being here. Now on to today's episode. Yay! It's the Lauren and Lauren show today. I'm so honored to have my special guest, Lauren Polly. She is the multi-award-winning author of the book, The Other Side of Bipolar. Now, stay with me because she's got an awesome, amazing story to tell about her personal experience of the labels of mental illness that we're going to abolish, and she's going to share all kinds of awesome things with us. So thank you for being here, Lauren.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, anything more you want to add to your introduction before you hop in and tell us about your journey and all the other good stuff we're going to talk about?
Well, no, you covered it. I mean, I think my biggest mission in life, like your mission, is to change women's life. I love working with people blazing a new trail, and that can look as simple as just redirecting your life, redirecting your focus to one of more possibilities and out of limitations. So this label conversation, whether or not you have a diagnosis or not, or just feel kind of stuck in a box, it's for you. So yeah, excited to dig in.
Totally awesome. So we provided a link to Lauren's book. Her website is laurenpolly.com. Get connected with her. If her message is resonating with you and you think that you can learn more from her, go seek her out. Awesome. So I watched one little PBS interview with you, and you said that you were diagnosed at 14 with something. Tell us how all that unfolded.
Yeah, so at 14, I was diagnosed with bipolar, and that was after a suicide attempt. So I was struggling in school. I had up and down moods for months and months, kind of a little bit more exacerbated than normal, prepubescence. I think everybody's a bit moody at that age. And I was struggling in silence for a long time. And the silence was because I didn't really have words to put with what I was feeling or experiencing. And of course, we all know that when we try to make something secret and hoard it to ourselves and figure it out in a little bubble, it just gets exacerbated. It gets too big to actually handle after a while. And that's when the suicide ideation started to come in. So my parents found the suicide letter that I had written, and I was whisked away to the psychologist and then the psychiatrist. And after test and finding that it runs in my family, I got labeled with bipolar. And then from there, it was an interesting journey. I spent about maybe 6 or 7 years in very, very traditional approaches, kind of limitation-based therapy, lots of medication, until like lightning struck one day, and I found a holistic psychiatrist who just changed everything for me, and has really been the foundation of the work that I put forth in the world.
Okay, so to explain to me what does the term bipolar mean? What is that?
What is that? So bipolar is different than like unipolar depression. So when someone has clinical depression, they have a lack of interest, they have no energy, they just it's beyond being down in the dumps. You're really, 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 you just don't really seem pepped up by life at all. Everything kind of clouds in around you. When you're bipolar, you have that, but you also have the extreme upswing as well. And so that is excessive energy, kind of provocative behavior, erratic behavior. There's a whole bunch of different kind of symptomatics that you can find with the diagnosis. For me, it looked like going up and down on a roller coaster day in and day out. Mm-hmm. Like I said, lots of teens have that, but this was extreme.
Right. Yeah. So this used to be called manic depressive.
True story.
Yes. Right? Okay. So there's probably an interesting story around why it started to be called something different.
Why they renamed it, basically. Right. You know?
Yeah. I had someone. I'm always so careful. It's not my right to tell anybody else's story or anybody else's secrets, but someone very dear to me experienced in her 30s some major life events that would cause anyone to feel depressed and upset. And, she had a major move. Her best friend died. She, just all of these things that are on the list of things that can cause you to get depressed. And when she went for help, they just gave her drugs. That nobody helped her try to figure out how to work her way and feel her way through these experiences to a place where she felt better, they just started giving her drugs. And after a certain amount of time, it's like she can no longer be without them if she stops taking them. Now her brain has forgotten how to produce the chemicals it needs to produce, and is there even a cure for that? So what's better? What's the best path to treating
Yeah,
mental
I think
illness?
I think the best path is kind of what works for the individual. I think meds definitely have their place, especially something that's kind of more traditional, like a chemical imbalance, but it shouldn't be the only thing. And kind of my mission with all of this is everyone has the conversation, medication or not. They're either all in the camp of traditional or all in the camp of alternative therapies. There's not a lot of people talking about the benefit of making your own paths and combining both. And that's really where I found success. When I was younger, I definitely needed that medication. And then being able to work with a holistic psychiatrist, all of a sudden, after I started feeling good about myself, we were doing more holistic techniques, connecting me to my body, looking at diet, exercise, energy work, all of it. I didn't need as much medication. He was able to titrate it down to the point where I wasn't having body side effects like I was on heavier dosage. But it was because we were actually doing a holistic approach. So I think it's really tricky. If someone has a life event, obviously you know what the cause is. It's the life event. Mm-hmm. So having some sort of deep dive into how resilient are you? Let's give you some techniques to help you bounce back and really process through and feel what you're going through so you don't shove it down and live with it kind of in your deep underbelly for the rest of your life. And I think, unfortunately, depending on whose couch you end up on, sometimes it is more of a, here's a pill, feel better. You really have to look at who's providing your care and demand something different. If it doesn't feel right to you, you got to trust your intuition and seek out other professionals. There's a lot of people out there to help.
Okay, so when the book is about bipolar, but this applies to everything. So anxiety. I have a lot of people that I really, really love that struggle desperately with anxiety, that they are, small things that other people just don't even notice terrify them and, get them into bundles of nerves. And so what's the first step? Well, what if you're that girl who is, afraid of things that shouldn't be frightening? Well, what's the advice that we give her? What are the steps that she takes?
Well, I would say first and foremost, get connected with right now. Because so often fears and anxiety are in that what if territory and not like what if possibilities, like a big dream. It's a what if this happens. And before you know it, you're so lost in your mind of what could be that you lose track of what actually is. So for me, when I was having really bad panic attacks and anxiety attacks in my earlier years, that was one of the techniques the holistic psychiatrist told me. One hand on the belly, one hand on the heart, breathing in through the stomach, breathing out through the upper hand through the heart. Whether or not you go with the different energy centers in the body or you just simply connect to your breath. And right now, it is amazing to be able to go right now in this moment, I'm okay. Mm-hmm. And also have the realization that when your mind spins that way, you're freaking yourself out. So to be able to kind of go, oh, wait a second, I am looking at something that hasn't actually happened yet. I'm stuck in a what if. What's actually right now and what can I respond to kind of drive this in the right direction? When you're lost in anxieties and fear, you've given up control. You've given up the creative wheel and, like you said, the choice to actually be happy. So you have to be able to come back into the now to help with that.
Okay, so we unofficially, the month of July is all about our bodies. So let's talk about how food and nutrition and lifestyle and exercise and all of those things connect with mental health. And we're going to, from now on, we're going to call it mental health and not mental illness.
Very true. I always call it mental wellness because I love the whole wellness.
Mental wellness, that's awesome.
The mental wellness, everything is wellness these days, and I love it because it pulls in all the holistic, and it also brings you into more of those preventative measures of actually just choosing to pay attention to yourself. And, believe it or not, we all have mental health issues, quote unquote, from time to time. I mean, totally if you're saying you don't, you're probably not looking deep enough. Uh-huh. It's being able to have these conversations and like, okay, I'm looking at my body wellness today, but what about my mental wellness as well? And how do they play together? Because there's such a huge connection. between the mind and the body. And research is showing that more and more these days. So to argue different at this point, I don't feel like happens. It did back in the day. But that was a huge thing for me. If you read my book, I always say it's the other side of any kind of limitation you have, not just the other side of bipolar. Because you can find yourself in the story with worries, anxieties, depressions, or kind of those creative spots where you're just reaching for greater. You want to get out of the box and the role that you've taken on. We all kind of flip out at that time. That's a boat rocking circumstance for your mental wellness. One way to help with that is to come back to your body. And again, like the anxiety thing, when our brain goes and goes in the what ifs, we lose connection with now and we give up our creative control over life. The body is an amazing vehicle to come back into the now. Look at it for yourself. Whenever you have a lot of fear and anxiety, how connected are you to your body?
Yeah, completely. And, I'm this might be too much information, but it's my information, so I can share it if I want to. I am going to be 55 this summer, so I'm still experiencing some symptoms of menopause and entering this new stage in my life. And I'm a firm believer that anything that your body is doing is in response to what your vibration is, what your level of resistance is. So I'm being grateful for hot flashes, because when I feel one begin, I'm like, okay, what are you doing? Are you all bundled up and tensed up and being anxious about something, or are you relaxed and going with the flow? And at the minute that I go, oh, everything's all right, take a deep breath or two, I'm able to just not even allow that to happen. So we can give thanks for some of these symptoms, if you will, because they're clues as to what we're letting go on in our bodies and our minds, right?
Well, and I love that too, because quite frankly, our body is a sensate organ. Its job is to give us information. You get a belly ache because you ate something funky. You know what I mean? So your body is actually that. It's giving you information constantly. And huge thing with the mental health, also with body issues as well. We're very, very aware, and our bodies are very aware. We are not living in a bubble like most of us think we are. So a lot of times the things going through your head, the anxieties, the symptoms your body is expressing, not yours. It's your awareness of the environment or other people around you. So letting your body give you those signals and not making it wrong, not judging it or shutting it down, but go, okay, thank you, body, for the information.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then asking a question of what's required in that moment. Because sometimes it's something different, a different food choice, a movement, a relaxation. Just allowing your body to be a partner to talk to you is it's a very relaxed space to be in. And that and what it can contribute to an anxious mind or a depressed mood or someone who's going up and down and is kind of flying off the rafters. It just brings a quiet sense of presence into the moment. So again, the body is an amazing vehicle for that.
Cool. That's very, very awesome. All right. So what is your favorite mental wellness technique or activity or practice? Or if it's too hard to choose one, you can give me your top 3.
I'd say kind of like how I choose, because I have so many of them.
Right.
I have a running list of things that make me feel like me and bring me back to my body. So I have a list of different activities, different things that I can do. Okay. And whenever I feel off, whenever I feel down.
I want to emphasize this. Let's go back and everybody hear what she said. Things that make me feel like me. This is such a pervasive thing, because so many times people are trying to make you be like them. Believe what I believe. I'm right, you're wrong. But when you go back to yourself and who you really are, this is where all your happiness and peace is going to be. Okay, so now continue. Sorry for interrupting you.
But also that's where a lot of the mental angst comes from, is you're always trying to live up to the Joneses. You're trying to fix yourself constantly. And most of us are not in a label with a diagnosis, but we're in a label based on what other people have given us. The perfect mom, the one who always messes up, the family member who never has it together, the one who's bad with money. It's surprising the amount of boxes we get put in as we live our life. And again, if you're not feeling like you and you're not doing activities and living your life, doing the things that make you feel like you're kind of in a recipe to be disconnected and anxious and depressed a whole bunch of times. So I have that running list, and anytime I feel off, I come back to that, and whatever pops, I go and do it without thinking twice about it. And that's everything from walks with nature, yoga, I love one of my favorite energy techniques is called the access bars, and that's a gifting and a receiving technique. So you have someone run it on you, but it basically deletes all the stuff in your brain and your body that's not yours, the stuff you've picked up on from the environment. I just feel clear and fresh afterwards. So all of those things are on my list, and whatever pops, I listen and I go and do it. It's a very simple way. Plus, you're kind of like building a manual for yourself. You know, if you kind of look at like, well, I make my car run really well when I do this stuff. Most of us don't sit to do that, but it can be a really fun and very playful activity. Yeah. What are the things that make you feel like you and make your body feel yummy? And keep a running tally of that and engage with it. You know?
Right. And you can always come back to those. So I know that you must be a fan of journaling. Any favorite journaling techniques? We have a whole series of 5 journaling steps that if you can do these every day, they are very playful, but they help you be in charge of your attitude and how you're going to look at life and keep you coming back to being in touch with yourself and, rewarding yourself at the end of the day for things that you did well instead of beating yourself up for the things that are still on your list and things like that. So do you have any favorite secret journaling techniques you can share with us?
Well, like I said at the beginning, most of us are very aware, and the majority of stuff going through our head and our body isn't ours. So I really like it as a way to kind of dump out, because the stuff that's going constantly, most of it, when you get it out in some way, goes away because it's, again, your awareness that's not actually true for you. So being able to kind of have like a dumping ground, and sometimes if my hand cramps when I write, I'll use the memo thing on my iPhone. That's another beautiful way if you're a writer or if you're not a writer and you actually like to speak better, do it that way. You don't have to sit pen to paper. Sometimes I'll type it out as well. But cool, first thing in the morning or when you're kind of like your brain's going crazy, go ahead and just dump out what's in there. And then I tell my private coaching clients, you want to kind of watch where the themes are coming in. And journaling is huge for this because you'll start to notice yourself writing the same thing or saying the same thing if you're doing the verbal version over and over again, and that's clues into what your basic points of view are. And guess what? Those basic points of view create the majority of what shows up in your life. So you can catch your stories this way, not to go into judgment, to be like, oh, wow, I really have something where I don't think I'm good enough when I do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. I've said that 5 times this week. Yeah. Maybe I should challenge that perspective and choose something different.
Right. That's awesome. That's really, really, really good stuff. Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so let's see, what else? What else would you like to share? What are the I apologize, my neighbor's yelling. This is what happens when we work from home out in the middle of nowhere with the windows open.
I thought it was maybe one of your animals ruffling in the background there.
Yeah. It's the neighbor. So she distracted me. All right, so what else would you like to add? What else do my listeners just absolutely must have to hear today?
Well, and I think just going back to the message of the choice that you have, because so often, especially if you have a mental illness diagnosis, you think that you always have something to battle and you don't really have the choice to be happy. You have the choice to maintain yourself and be somewhat okay. And most of us, even if we're not diagnosed, we kind of have that thing in the back of our mind too, of like, I'm going to just maintain the status quo, or I'm going to live happy in the box I've been put in. And really the choice not only to be happy and to be you, but also to, explore new territory. One of the big messages in my book is that a lot of people with quote unquote mental illness or mental problems, they're amazing creators. They're amazing healers. They have awarenesses and they see the world differently. And it's amazing if they could actually harness that strength and that power and really apply it, what they can create not only for themselves, but for the world. And so many of us, especially if you're drawn to these conversations, you have that creative ability. It's just a matter of going, not only am I going to be okay and happy now, but I'm going to look at the creative parts of my life and where I can maybe blaze a new trail into something that's different. So I think that's such a huge message where true happy really, truly comes from being you in the moment, but also creating a future that you're looking forward to and you're excited to actually get to live and experience.
Some of my favorite teachers, Abraham-Hicks are some of my favorite teachers, and when they are asked about mental illness, they have the I don't know if it's a theory, but what they say is that we all crave freedom. Your soul wants to be free so badly, and the people who are manifesting mental illness are those who just absolutely refuse to have their freedom squashed, and so that it comes out in these different ways. So I thought that was very interesting, and then I think it's so important to not let any diagnosis or anything define you. This where I hear by myself today, today's topic would be that you have a body, you are not your body, that you're an eternal divine soul that is walking around in a beautiful collaborative body that wants to be your partner and wants to be your friend. And so even like a physical diagnosis like cancer, we hear this horrible word, and then suddenly that becomes the star of our life. That's what we talk about, that's what we chat about, that's what we write about and read about, and we get all immersed in this disease and become defined by that instead of being a person who actually has cancer. We become a cancer patient who has maybe a little bit of life over here. Is that, you see what I mean? So um, what are some ways to, and even when I was writing the email this morning to my list, and like, oh, what do I say? I don't want to, we're in such a politically correct place, you don't want to say any words that are going to offend somebody. And so do it, or as teachers, we don't want to put words into their mind that are not empowering. So, and this whole area of mental illness is like a walking on eggshells kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it leads to stigma. And I mean, growing up as someone who was constantly stigmatized, and, I experienced that quite a few times when I was 14, 15, just fresh diagnosed, speaking my label to somebody and watching them shut down. Fascinatingly enough, even these days, saying it to someone and watching them go into fear or judgment right in front of me, even people who've known me for a while, watching them kind of doubt, it's hard, it's painful. But for a while, I let that shut me down in a way where I have to hide this because other people judge it. And no matter what you're dealing with, no matter what you're dealing with at all, even like personal stuff of like personal debt or, any kind of thing that's going on, the hiding of it is really what shuts us down in our own self-expression and therefore our happiness. So you have to really get comfortable with judgment, because guess what? This world is built on judgment. Everybody, even if they're like discerning, they have discerning taste, that's judgment light. It's still judgment. This reality really functions on what's right and what's wrong. And things aren't black and white that way. There's lots of shades of gray. So if you can build the muscle to be an allowance of where you are right now, and even like right now, if you can just let your body relax and drop whatever barrier you have, wherever this conversation may be triggering something for you, wherever you've been fighting against a label, because most of us will do that. We've got something and we don't want it to be so we shove it down and hide it, or we actively fight and resist it. If you just let yourself have that soft space, when judgment comes, because it will, unfortunately, that's life, you'll be able to go, you know what, they're judging because they're judging, not because I'm judgeable. Right. And so many people don't build that differentiation in their mind of like, actually, nothing's really wrong with me. Even with a diagnosis, there's nothing wrong with me.
Not at all.
This is just the way the world functions, and that judgment actually has nothing to do with me personally.
So I'm going to let it go. So talk to me, what have been your experiences with your clients between, what's the relationship between mental health and substance abuse, or drugs and alcohol and addiction, that kind of thing?
A lot of people use drugs and alcohol as a way to not be as aware. And so, like, imagine yourself being, I always say you're like a big old satellite dish, right? You're walking around, you're picking up on all this information. Some of us are more open to receiving that than others. If you're overly sensitive, you get overwhelmed a lot. You don't like big crowds, you probably fall into this category. Nothing's wrong with you. You're just aware, right? You've got an aware body, too, that may actually be acting up sometimes as well. So a lot of times when you're so aware and you're so raw with it can be too much. So what people do, they don't have healthy mechanisms. They don't know they're aware. They don't know how to handle it. So they discover drugs and alcohol kind of numb it out a little bit. It helps them disconnect a little bit. So a lot of people will use it even in small amounts as a way to disconnect and therefore feel more comfortable. It's not right or wrong. It's just kind of what people do. And sometimes when it's excessive that way or you need it, that's something to maybe look at. Where are you trying to check out of it? And again, my mental health conversations always come back to the fact that you are aware. You are picking up on a lot of information. How do you handle all of that? It's like empathic abilities run amok, you know? And you really have to build the muscle of how do I actually apply this to my benefit and not feel the need to numb out to it.
And so the subject of empathy and empaths is always very, very interesting to me because it to me, I'm relatively empathic, but I don't think that I wouldn't label myself an empath like some people do. But it seems like a curse to me that and that you are.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah, like you're. Why would you? And if I were an empath, I would try to figure out a way not to be because it sounds like a not very fun way to live your life at the mercy of the feelings and confusion of everyone that's around you.
But that's the crux point right there, at the mercy of. And so many people, that's the exact same thing as like checking out or going into the worry mind. You're giving up your power and your creative control.
Yeah.
And so that's the work that we start to do of like, okay, how do you not be at the effect of other people, but how do you actually utilize this as a strength?
And it's a gift, right?
It's a gift. Like for me, when I was younger, I was so aware of everybody in high school and middle school that it really took me down crazy train. It was too much. I was so overwhelmed that I was like, I just have to shut the world out. And the way to do that is suicide. Yikes. Super extreme. But it was interesting throughout my entire journey. My professional background is as a speech therapist. I've worked in the hospital for 15 years. My ability to work with nonverbal patients is because I can feel them and I can hear them even when they don't talk. I'm able to walk into a hospital room and immediately connect to their emotions and create massive change because of it. It's the same thing I bring to my life coaching and workshops. So you start to twist the mindset out of that twisted nature of I'm at the effect and it's a curse, into what if this is actually an ability and it's up to me to learn how to utilize it and not lose myself in the process, because most of us just get so swept away that it's like emotions are coming. Another really cool thing, there was a meditation teacher, I can't remember who it was, but they were saying to somebody who was in this empathic thing as a curse, what's your experience walking through a garden? And the person's like, oh my God, I can feel the plants and everything's like vibrating and I can hear all this stuff. It's just amazing. It's this sensate experience. And they're like, okay, now you want to shut down your abilities around people. Now walk through that same garden with what you're doing and blocking everything out. And the person was like, it's just dull. So I think sometimes there's this trade-off of like, yeah, when you're super aware, it can be very intense, but there's intense beauty in the world as well. So you have to be able to kind of like hedge your bets a little bit, Right.
Mm-hmm. So, but I loved how that was. So being able to take this empathic ability and use it as a superpower. By your perspective, by the way, this is Romeo, by the way. Those of you, he's giant. He's like 20 pounds. So he can really disrupt things if he decides to around here. Yeah, okay, buddy. Yeah, good job. Okay, so yeah, I told you before we went live about, I have people in my life who are, struggling with different diagnoses and things like this, and I do see this empathic ability in them, and it does really just seem that there's just more coming at them than they know how to handle and to process and that the key is learning, that this isn't mine. I can take this and let it go, and these are the things I'm going to enjoy and absorb, and just kind of making choices about your perspective on things, right?
Yeah, and it's building the muscle. Some people go, well, I should just realize this is what it is and I should feel perfectly fine. And oh my God, life doesn't work that way.
No.
You got to be practiced with it. And then you get comfortable with certain sets of energies and you get thrown into a new circumstance. And then you're like, oh my God. You just need to be able to practice and have this toolkit in your bucket to be able to go, you know what, I'm going to come back to me. I don't have to do everything with what I'm aware of. It's not my job to fix or to heal anybody. I can come back to me in this moment. I use the tools of access consciousness, which is kind of the most practical and also the most applicable tools for empaths that I have found. And it's funny, I talk about that in my book, and I just had a reader who had read the book and reached out to me, and she's coming on board for a coaching program, and she said, basically, I'm more of an empathic personality. So are you. The difference is it's driving me nuts and you're creating with it.
Right.
She's like, I want you to teach me how to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I want. Do it now. And I'm like, that's exactly it. You just have to look at the people in the world who have similar gifts and are utilizing it and have information to share, and then dig in and use whatever actually feels light, fun, and of interest to you. You don't have to buy the whole thing lock, stock, and barrel.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
You know,
I love
that's that intuitive ability, you know?
Right. And I think that's an amazing message to leave with, that, you know, making your choice to come back to who you are and to create your life the way that you want it. And you can tell how distracting this is. We're gonna make a total pet reel one day with all of these things that are for those of you who only have audio. Romeo has decided he wants attention, so he's like pawing at my face, and it's very hard to stay focused when this is going on, but we're all good. All right, so Lauren Polly, author of The Other Side of Bipolar. Go check her out at laurenpolly.com. Thank you so much for being here with us, and I just know that we've managed to reach some people that are really going to be helped by what you said. And, you know, don't let anybody make you wrong, ever. Ever.
It has nothing to do with you. That's on them.
Nothing to do with you, right? Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to be back here next week with another awesome guest that I don't remember who exactly it is at the moment. But we're here every Tuesday and Thursday. So we'll see you next Tuesday. And remember, in the meantime, that happiness is a choice, and you can always choose to be happy first. See you soon.